Hello, and here, something of a virtual YouTuber myself. Today, we have ourselves another old GPU, the AMD R9 290. My first impressions of this card is, it's really goddamn hot. Like, I can heat my entire room with this thing in the winter hot. Like, I looked it up and 95 degrees is its normal operating temperature, and my hand really felt it the entire time I was benchmarking this card. Alright, so I got this reference R9 290 for about 27 USD, and for that price I honestly can't complain. But I did have one complaint, and it was the fan was broken on the card when I got it. Nothing super glue can't fix. A replacement fan is like 25 bucks on Newegg, but I didn't feel like buying it. So anyway, the super glue manages to stay strong, and you can view how well it holds up during my 3 AM live streams. Now, like always, we're going to go over the basics. Launched a decade ago on November 5th, 2013, this Hawaii GPU is using the GCN 2.0 architecture. At the time, this was a high-end GPU coming from AMD, and it really does feel like that if it's still performing like it did. For those who care, this card has 2560 shading units and a GPU clock of 947 MHz with a memory at 1250 MHz. This GPU has a whopping 275 watt TDP, and once again, I just want to say, I can feel it. It's hot.
Oh, that's hot. That's hot.
It showered me with its warm air as I sat next to it during testing. AMD recommends a 600 watt PSU, and this particular card requires one 6-pin and one 8-pin power connector. It's almost as if we've come full circle these days. I wouldn't recommend this card if your power bill is on the pricier side of things. It would be better to get a GTX 1060, 1650, or RX 470, 570, as these cards perform just as well, if not better, and are way more efficient than this hot boy. You won't feel like you're under pressure of trying to fix a nuclear power plant from going off. Another advantage of the cards I mentioned before, the R9 290 driver-wise is now an AMD legacy drivers, which at the latest were last updated in 2022. This time I'll be using Nimez drivers, just to show how well this does with them. Normally, I just use legacy drivers, but the mod drivers are getting easier to install and just have to find the download, which a quick Google search will bring you right to them. Anyway, using Nimez, we are using driver version 23.4.1, at least that's what both AMD software and Afterburner says. Also, a little side note, the R9 290 will show up as the R9 290X wherever the GPU shows up in the system. Like always, we'll be testing this card on 2023's budget bench, using MSI Mag B550 Gaming Plus motherboard, a Ryzen 5 5600 with 16 gigs at 3200 MHz. I said I didn't need competitive settings for Fortnite, but for a GPU test, I think it has its use since performance mode relies more on the CPU. Also, another reason why I tried out Nimez drivers is there's a bit of texture flicking when you use these old Radeon cards. I thought it would help, but it didn't really do anything with the flickering. It's still perfectly playable, and sometimes I completely stopped noticing it. For Forza, I managed to get an above 60 FPS average at medium instead of the high preset, and with TA, you can actually see the license plate. Also with medium, I wasn't bothered with the low VRAM warning, if I remember correctly. So with Cyberpunk, without FSR, the average for the medium preset is roughly a 30 FPS average, and in my opinion that is playable, but I want to make sure it didn't drop into the 20s, so I added balanced FSR, and I still managed to look decent. So to my surprise, recommend settings are indeed the settings I would recommend for Resident Evil. I believe it being a mix of low and medium settings with performance FSR added. Even with a 10-year-old card, this game can still look and run decently well. I didn't know this game would launch the R9 290. Is it the Nimez drivers, or did they update the game? Because I know a while back it wouldn't launch with the RX 570. In Street Fighter, these results are just for the fights, and at the moment World Tour, the story mode for the game, isn't optimized at the moment, and you'll have to turn down the settings for that mode. So if you're here, thank you for staying with me so far. The R9 290, in my opinion, is almost refusing to show its age. This once high-end GPU is still kicking. It will even show new cards much newer than it what an old-timer will do. This card has been a treat to benchmark, and if I was stuck with this card, I wouldn't be too disappointed, unless I had a high power bill. This card is an absolute fighter, and the heat it gives off is proof how much power both literally and figuratively it has. Now, I had this card on an open air test bench, so if I had to put this in a case, it would be in something with really good airflow, and possibly some aftermarket cooling for the card itself, if you could even find anything like that these days for it. Let me know down below if you have any experience with this card, either it be negative or positive. I'm ManHero. Like if you like, and dislike if you don't like it, or just hate me. Subscribe for more, or if you're masochistic. See you next video. Bye bye.
I put the new 4Gs on the G. I trap until the bloody bottoms is underneath, cause all my homies got it out the street. I keep 100 racks inside my jeans. I remember hitting the mall with my whole team. Now a homie can't answer calls cause I'm ballin'. I was waking up getting ready